Hey everyone, I've got a new video today, and this is just going to look at a position that occurred in an Ulf Andersson game versus Robert Huebner, played in 1981. And I'm just going to post these type of positions now in games where I think it'll improve my chess and your chess. So my main aim here is to not move any pieces, or basically think of our own plan and try and work out what to do in certain situations. So in this position, Black has just played queen to c6, so it's white to move. And I recommend just pausing the video and having a think about what to play as white in this position, because this type of training will improve your chess immensely. So the first thing I would note is that Black's main idea here, so just played queen c6. So what is their idea? So I believe they want to play queen takes f3, and white will recapture with the e-pawn, and therefore the pawn on d4 for white will be incredibly weak. So again, I'm not going to try and move any pieces around at the moment anyway. I'm just going to go through some ideas. So what else can we notice? Well, the black pawn on c7 could become a target for white in the endgame, and it's obvious that black wants to try and trade queens off. So as white, what plan would we try and think of here? So there's several moves that come to mind. The first one for me is maybe playing king to g2 here. And the point is that after queen takes f3, king takes f3, black could play c5. So I think this rules out this move for white. This is because now after d takes c5, bishop takes, black's not got any more weaknesses. The c7 pawn was a major weakness in our starting position after queen c6. So this is something that we really don't want to do. So I think there's a couple of plans here for white to play. We could start off with queen takes c6 followed by rook takes c6, and then we've got to develop our bishop on c1, and I think the best square may be bishop f4 or bishop to g5. And then perhaps we could play the move e3 here, and we've got our rooks to get connected together, and we could shove a rook on the open file perhaps. We could even dominate the dark squares. So if we think ahead now, let's say queen takes c6, rook takes c6, bishop g5 perhaps, and maybe black could play knight to d5. So when we take on d5 with the knight, after e takes d5, there's bishop takes e7, followed by king takes e7, and as white now, we could maybe play the move e3, followed by f4 and dominate the dark squares, and win to a rook and king endgame. Now this is very hard to follow, so what I just said was, let's say if queen takes c6, rook takes c6, bishop g5, knight to d5, knight takes, e takes, bishop takes e7, king takes e7, and maybe I was thinking e3, and maybe even f4. So back to the position. That's one plan we could play. We could also, at the end of that, also plonk a rook on the c file. Perhaps that is stronger. And in the game, Ulf Andersson actually played a very similar variation. So in the game, it went queen takes c6, the rook takes, bishop g5. Black played knight to d5. White captured on d5, the pawn recaptured, bishop takes e7, and now king takes e7. But at the end of this, I believe white played a superior move to e3, because white now has to go for the open file. So they have to play rook to c1, black recaptured, and the rook recaptured. And this is where we need to think for a second time. Now there's no obvious breakthrough, so at the moment after rook takes c1, the rook is threatening to take on c7, So since the rook's attacking c7, black played king to d6, and as white now we must think again of what to do. I believe that there's two options here. Maybe white could go for a solid approach. What would you play in this position? One idea is now to play the move f3, and black could play the move c6. White could follow up with king f2, and maybe black could play rook to e8. It's very difficult as white to break through in this position though, so that may be the reason why white should play f3, is to try and support an e4 break. So white could opt to play e4 to break black's position, or there's another move a4 that white can also play to try and break open black's position. Alternatively, white could also opt to fix the position with moves like b4, and maybe even have a strong outpost on c5 for their own rook, and maybe then try and get the king into an ideal setup and position. The problem with the a4 though is that maybe black doesn't have to react to it at all, and it doesn't seem to be an advantage for white. Maybe if black was forced to play the move b4 after a4, it could be played, but after a4 maybe black can just play the move c6, and after captures and recaptures there's not much for whites on that side of the board, and not really much that they've gained. To try and get the e4 break in as well, we need to play the move maybe f3 and possibly divert the king around all the way to d3 to support it. But the problem is that black may be able just to play rook e8, and this maybe stops any counterplay for white. So what would you play in this position then? The point is that white is slowly trying to improve their own position. And the game proceeded with the move f3, so white here is trying to play the move e4, which makes perfect sense. Black played the move c6, so keeping everything very solid and defending their b5 and d5 pawn. King f2 was played by white, and as we predicted, rook to e8 from black. So again, white wants to play the move e4, but now this rook prevents this on e8. So now white's got to think of another plan, and again I want for you just to stop and think, what would you play in this position? So if you were in a game, you were in a really nice tournament hall, you've got, let's say, half an hour on the clock and you need to win this game. How do you think you'd break through? Basically what I'm trying to get at is that how can white make some progress in this position? And maybe set up in an ideal setup for the endgame. So white doesn't have to force a win here, they have to just get their pieces in more ideal positions. Perhaps a win is not even possible, but it's better to test black's defences. So for this reason, white now played the move g4. Now the point behind this move is that white's trying to expand on the king side and just get up a nice setup for the endgame. The game proceeded with the move a5, and white played the move h4, gaining more space. Black played g6, and now rook c2. A very important move, because this now defends the b2 pawn and the e2 pawn, and now it frees up the king to move to an ideal position. h6 was played by black, and white can now freely move their king around to g3. Now so after this move, what should black play? Now black is a very strong player, 2-6-40 in 1981, so he's no mug. But he does actually go wrong with the next move. Ideally what black should play here is rook to e6. The point is that after king f4, black can play a move like check and force the king to go backwards. So it's very nice to see that black actually makes a miscalculation here. He played the move g5. So why is this a mistake? Well, this is very similar to some Alpha 0 games that you might see. And the point is that now this h6 pawn for black becomes very susceptible to an attack, and it is a big weakness. So instead of capturing here, white actually played the move h5. So now this h6 pawn becomes a massive weakness, and if it's ever taken, this h pawn will fly down the board. Black played the move f6. And again, let's stop and think, what should we play as white here? Well, after f6, there's really no more counterplay on that side of the board, and we probably should shift our efforts to the other side. And for this reason, we need to get the king in a more ideal position once again. So there's really nothing stopping us. The c5 square is pretty much locked in, so perhaps we should now move the king. And this is exactly what Ulf Andersson did. He played the move king f2. So the king is just going to return to the centre, and black played king c7. So now white's efforts should be focused on creating a pawn break, because otherwise there's no way to win this game. So slowly but surely we should try and prepare the move e4. In the game, Ulf Andersson played e3, and black played king to b6. And we'll see what white does. They play the move king e2, and black played the move rook to c8. So they're trying to create a break of their own, perhaps with c5. So what would you play in this position? Because I believe Ulf Andersson's move was rather clever. Well, he played the move rook c5, so this prevents any c5 advances for black. And slowly this is just crushing black's position. White's just gaining more space and stopping black from playing. Black played rook to e8 in the game, king to d3 from Ulf Andersson, so gaining more space in the centre, and now they're actually threatening to play the move e4. And there's no way for black to prevent this. So rook e7 in the game, and now the move e4. So what would happen if takes? So let's just work this out without moving any pieces. If d takes e4, as white will probably recapture it with the f pawn. Let's say rook to d7, we could play the move rook to f5, attacking the pawn on f6, and rook d6 is pretty much forced. And then it's up to white maybe to think of another plan to try and win the endgame. Maybe even with an e5, or just lock up the position with, let's say, king to c3. There's a lot of options that white can play. So I don't believe black wants to really take this off. So they play the move rook to d7. And Ulf Andersson played the move a3. And white now has to think of another plan. So what would you play? Let's say black played the move rook d8 is what happened in the game. Now I believe white's plan should now be to play the move b4. And the point is that after a takes b4, a takes b4. White is now threatening to play the move e takes d5. And if rook takes d5, then white can play the move king to e4. And will get their king into the f5 square, and this should win the game. So that should be white's plan. So in the game, what happened? Well, white played rook c1, rook d7, rook c2, rook d8, rook c3, rook d7, rook c2, rook d8, and a bit of back and forth until finally rook c5 and now rook d8. So this was just to get to the time control for white. And now finally white played the move b4. So this locks everything into place, and now the rook on c5 is secured by 2 pawns. After captures, white recaptures and black plays rook to d7. So now finally white gains the breakthrough they needed. So after e takes d5, black recaptured with the rook, rook takes d5. And I believe the point is that if, let's say, c takes d5 here, white can maybe play the move rook to c8 and infiltrate this way. So really black doesn't want this. So in the game, rook takes d5 was played. And finally white infiltrates with king to e4, threatening to play rook takes d5 and winning a pawn. So black played rook to d8. And there's one final move now that wins the game. So let's just see this. So the rook is attacking d4, so we can't play king to f5 just yet. So there is another move that white can play to secure the win and gain another breakthrough. So white actually played the move d5 here. And this is because after rook to e8 check, white played king f5, c takes d5 was played, and Ulf Andersson took on d5, rook to e3, and this is just a very easy win for white now. King takes f6, rook takes f3, and now king g7. After rook f4, there's a check thrown in, king c7 and takes, and white's going to queen the h pawn. And as you will see, after rook takes h6, the h6 pawn was a weakness in black's camp, and black actually resigned the game in this position. So from the get-go, after queen to c6, white just slowly improved their own position throughout this little scenario. And this is the little takeaway I want you to get to improve your own chess. So bit by bit white improved the position. So the first section was queen takes c6, followed by rook takes c6 and this nice bishop g5 tactic. After knight d5, takes, 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 and rook c1 and captures, captures, c6. We're in this endgame position, and this is where white had to have a big think again. But after the move king f2, rook e8, their idea now is just to simply gain some space. So after g4, a5, h4, g6, and rook c2, h6, king g3, and now g5. So white's fulfilled their end of the bargain. They've decided to gain some space on the king side. And after the move g5 and h5, after f6, white gets on with their next plan of trying to play the move e4 and block up the other side of the board. And this went king f2, king c7 and e3, king b6, king e2, and after rook c5 and rook e8, king d3. So white's now prepared to play the move e4, and white knows that black can't recapture this. So they think of a plan, and after several moves we get to the same position. After rook c5, there's rook d8, and finally white plays the move b4 to lock everything into place. And after black has nothing else to do, there's a capture, and finally we infiltrate with king to e4. And this all stemmed straight away from move 14 after queen c6. And this is an example of a strong player, Ulf Andersson, rated 2600. So he must have calculated bit by bit how to reach that endgame and win the position. And this is what we all should be doing to improve our own chess, especially to gain several hundred rating points. And I believe all of us could do it. And I believe the final conclusion is that this is just basic planning. So in our own games we also need to plan efficiently and effectively like this game. And it's not about calculating everything in one go, it's just about reaching the next position where you feel you have the advantage and you've got something to work with where you think you can win the game. And this is precisely what happened in this game. So I hope this has been very useful. This has been probably a long and wordy video, but I hope you gained something from it. I'm hoping to do many my other videos like this from now on. I believe it'll help improve your chess and my chess, and I'm kind of tired of doing so many computer games all the time. I feel like a lot of YouTubers are now doing this for clickbait, and I genuinely want to improve chess and improve my own chess at the same time. And there's no other way to do that than just simply knuckling down and looking at positions and trying to work out how to best win the game. And just looking at engines all the time, we won't do that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. So please tell me what you think, and I hope to improve actually at this aspect of my narration, because I want to do a lot more videos like this where we're going to learn how to become much stronger players. Anyway, sorry for the waffle, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you guys.